I don't know what you just said. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Monday, November 11th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We're brought to you by us. Sign up for Stokastic Sims. Get a free month by using one of our partners. Link in the description. We'll talk about that in a bit. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. 5 games, and they all lock at 8. It's going to be a pretty fun night. The sweats should be intense down the stretch, and I expect to be a part of those sweats. So fingers crossed. Spags, how are you? How was your weekend?
Good. I'm happy to be back here. I feel like when you have football on the weekend, it kind of doesn't feel like a real weekend. But honestly, yesterday I was like so discouraged by the afternoon slate. Like it was ended up being a break-even day, but I just turned off football. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Got back going for the line. I hate to admit that too, because like I will watch any football game, but it was just how that slate went, where like every play was so awful. It's the exact opposite for NBA today, where it's like every play looks great. Every team's got plays for the most part. 11-11, make a wish, Josh. Our wish has been granted. It's actually a fun NBA slate on a Monday.
For the first time ever, seriously, like ever, it's probably 2-3 weeks ago, I saw that the clock was 11:11, and I made a wish. And it was the first time that I ever didn't just immediately go, I wish it was a little bit taller. That's just always been my trigger. I've never gotten a wish in correctly before, but I got that one in. And I like texted my wife and was just like, hey, I finally made the wish at 11:11. She's like, you're an idiot.
You can't tell us what the wish is, or else it won't come true.
I can't. It was a future-based situation as well. But yeah, every other time it was just height related. And that's not going to work.
That's why
if I wake, tall. Can you imagine though if I woke, no, well, can you imagine if I just woke up and like all of a sudden I was like 7 feet tall and I was like, oh my God, I wasted it.
The worst part would be having to get all new clothes, I think that would bum me out as somebody like I've accumulated clothes. I don't want to have to start all over again. And for this new 7-foot tall body, it'd be the worst.
Yeah, I got to start figuring out where big and tall shops are. Ugh. Good God, that'd be awful.
Sling that meat though.
Yeah. I hope everything would grow proportionally, honestly. It would be really awful if it was just I had gigantic legs and the same everything.
You're like Peter Dinklage, but the big version.
Yeah, I did a reverse Dinklage.
Classic reverse Dinklage.
Classic reverse Dinklage. Well, anyway. You want to talk some basketball?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are 8-point favorites in Chicago, 237 total. This is the game with the highest pace. This is the game with the highest total. Pretty appealing. Well, one side of this game is significantly more appealing than the other, and that would be the Cleveland side. We're seeing a whole bunch of ownership coming into Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. We'll touch on the individual numbers in a second if we want to, but just out of curiosity, do you have a preferred Cleveland guy?
I have a non-preferred one if we can start there. I'm low on
either direction.
Mitchell. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of Cleveland guys I guess you could be down on. But out of the core guys, I'm low on Mitchell. Mitchell's deferring a lot to start the year, down to just 1.13 fantasy points per minute. Out of the big four, out of him, Mobley, Garland, Allen, he's the least good permanent producer right now, and he's still the most expensive. Some of that feels deliberate as well, and this has kind of been my concern point with Donovan Mitchell going to Cleveland in the first place, that him being there, having the ball as much as he does, kind of being a black hole / vortex, would cap the upside for Garland as a player, his ability to get where he needs to go and grow as he needs to. That said, Garland, higher assist rate on the year, usage rate a little bit lower, but he is touching the ball more. Mobley, we've talked enough times on here, usage rate's been up for him. He's rebounding better too. That helps him out. But I kind of feel like this offense, to succeed in the regular season, maybe not for the playoffs, it's like you have to get these guys going more. So Mitchell, fine enough to me, but on a day where he's going to be 25% owned, I like guys around his price point. I'm not crazy getting to Mitchell today. Everybody else, I'm with the field on or a little bit above. But Mitchell, I am low on him, kind of having to stand against him today because I've got him projected about 4 points less than Stokastic does.
Okay. What do you have him at?
Got him at 36.6.
Okay, I got 41-1. So you and I are both very different there. Yeah, so Mitchell's like 25 to 30% owned across DraftKings and FanDuel. Garland's in and around that 15 mark on both. Allen's like 15 to 20 across DraftKings and FanDuel. Evan Mobley's like in that 25 to 30 range for both. That's basically all the ownership here for Cleveland. Karis LeVert's getting a little bit I'm a little over on Mitchell on the DK side. That's where I'm playing tonight. I've got about 30 there. I also have a little over 30 of Darius Garland. Jared Allen is one of my preferred plays today. I liked him a lot Friday. I think that didn't really work out for me, going right back to the well at 6,900 here. So over the field on Jared Allen, and then just slightly under on Evan Mobley, but a pretty good stand, and over the field on Cleveland in general. I like the matchup quite a bit. They're certainly getting a bit of a pace up spot, which is helpful. The Chicago defense isn't all that much to write home about, or at least from an individual matchup standpoint, it's not. Somebody's going to be great for Cleveland. I guess the only worry here would be that they just treat them like they've treated the rest of the league and beat them by 100.
Which I think is a valid concern. Obviously, you're not trying to project blowouts here, especially in a game where it's only, a 7-point spread or 7.5-point spread here favoring. I'm not trying to do that, but I agree. Like, there's some concern here Chicago could hang in with them, even with having Levine back in there. So Cleveland's the best team in the league right now. I think it's sort of hard to argue that. I don't think that holds the entire year. But they're blowing teams. They're blowing the doors off of teams. I don't think it'd be crazy if that were the case, even if I do think Mitchell, to me, looks a little bit overowned.
Do you anticipate getting any Levert or any of these other guys?
Levert, I got 2% of. Ty Jerome, I got 1% of. That's about it for me. It's really more the middle guys here, like Mobley, Garland, I'm with the field on. And like you mentioned, Jared Allen, I've got almost 2x the field on him. So those were sort of my main Cleveland stands here, but not really that big stands relative to the rest of the slate, where there are some really huge stands to make later on, I think.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the rest of these guys for Cleveland now, especially with Wade back and what I would assume slowly but surely ramping up at least a couple extra minutes. Okoro's a terrible per minute dude. Wade's a terrible per minute dude. Merrill and Niang aren't exactly great. I don't think there's just enough minutes left for Ty Jerome to even matter, but he is a better per minute guy than everybody we just mentioned. I think the focus is really just congregated on those first four. And like, obviously, any one of those guys belongs in whatever lineup you want to have, especially on a 5-game slate like this. Like, they're all good. They all have ceilings that can get you to where you want to be. They're guys that are going to play north of 30 minutes. They're the most important parts of Cleveland. If you have a lineup that has Mitchell in it, go for it. If it's Garland, if it's Allen, if it's Mobley, if it's two of them, all of that is totally fine to me. Any combination of these guys, I'm totally on board with, because no one threatens them. They're not going anywhere barring foul trouble or injury. And then we get to Chicago. So Jalen Smith is questionable. Everybody else that's normally available here for Chicago is. I would imagine we're going to be getting Lonzo back soon, but I'm sure he'll just be gone again right after that. 17% ownership to Zach LaVine coming in on DraftKings. 17% ownership for Zach LaVine coming in on FanDuel. No one else on Chicago is projected for more than 6% ownership on either site. So let's start with LaVine, who I didn't really get a ton of. I'm a little nervous about the amount of Cleveland I have in relationship to Chicago, but they look like decent GPP pivots because of their lack of ownership for what this slate is, but none of them look good if you're just trying to think about point per dollar plays.
Yeah, I mean, not a single one to me would grade out more than a 4.7x value. So obviously the mythical 5x that we always kind of look at, it doesn't really matter functionally for GPPs, but it is a good, good reflection of how much you're going to get these guys. One running an optimizer, one running a sim, and I'm just not getting these guys very much at all. LaVine, I got 3% of. That'd be one of the most out of the core guys here. But I'm low on White. I'm low on Giddey. I am low on LaVine. I'm low on Vooch. I'm high on Jalen Smith in terms of the ownership here, just because he is 5% projected owned and he's a decent value on a slate where, Houston's opens up some value, but not really any ones that are that cheap for Jalen Smith, and he produces well per minute. So if he plays, I'll get 15% of him. But Chicago to me feels like there's a couple teams on the slate I think you just kind of skip over. Chicago, I don't even really want these guys as one-offs to get unique, even though I agree the game theory. You play a lot of Cleveland guys, you kind of want one Chicago guy, but they don't look out that well. They don't grade out that well at all.
No, I just I look at White and Vooch and Giddey, and I just see those guys and think oh, that's for what this slate is right now, for how heavy we have some of this ownership on some of these guys. Turning someone into one of those dudes makes a lot of sense to me, especially if I've got a Cleveland presence in the lineup as well. But if my lineup is kind of chalky, turning someone into Kobe White or Vooch or Giddey, I like that because I think that's a really interesting way to make your lineup a bit more unique on a day where I think we're congregating on the same value pretty aggressively. But I don't see anybody where it's just like, oh, I should definitely have a lot of him. Like I'm at like if you run Sims and have, 16% Kobe White, that's not an amount of Kobe White that's going to affect your day or like ruin your entire lineup portfolio. But at 3% owned, that might be the leverage you're looking for if you needed to take a stand on somebody that's relatively low owned. But I am a little scared of this matchup. Chicago breaking this Cleveland defense down doesn't feel super likely to me, but every day is they're 50-50 to cover 8. So that means they're probably in the game in those situations.
Yeah, it's I think projection wise, nobody here would just grade out that well. But I agree with the there's something to the idea if you're going to play multiple Cleveland guys or even just one, having somebody as kind of a lever back would make sense. It's such a chopped up usage group too, and I feel like that's one of the things where you have a lot of teams where it's like nobody above 25% usage, and this is one of them where Levine's the closest at 24.7.
And then if Jalen Smith is out, I don't think it's going to really matter for anybody. Have they confirmed whether or not Sonogo is available?
I've not seen that. You're right. Dig a little bit deeper than what I have on my sheets.
Let me pull up the 5:30 injury report. He was questionable earlier.
He's available. Adama Sonogo available.
Okay, so the fact that he's available makes me a little bit more concerned about whether or not Jalen Smith is playing. Good news is all these games lock at 8 o'clock. We're going to get every piece of this, or at least we should. Andrew Nemhard does not play today. That guy got me on Friday.
Hard to get that right.
11% on the scratch. Could have been a lot worse, I guess. If Gorgie Jeng was gorgeous dong, what is Usman Jeng? That's a good question. What kind of dong is he? What word can we turn that into?
Usman. Who's like human? Human. Gotta be an O though, I feel like.
I don't know. I'll brainstorm. I'll ask ChatGPT later.
Osmosis dong?
You know what? We got enough time for this that I want to laugh. All right, ChatGPT.
Oh, ooze. A lot of oozing. Lots of ooze.
Oozing dong?
The secret of the ooze.
Let's see. What does ChatGPT say here? Outstanding ding.
I like Ooh Man Dong by Emwald. I think it's good. Better than oozing dong.
I like outstanding ding. That's funny to me. It's probably not going to one that sticks. Let's see it. They went all ding instead of dong. Overpowering dong? That's not going to fit. Omnipotent dong? Oh, man.
That dong's seen some things. The omnipotent dong.
I mean, it's probably oozing. I think that's the one that rolls off the tongue fastest. But I don't know. Omnipotent dong is one I could hang on to at least for a bit. But we should try to use these so aggressively that they make it to the basketball reference nickname section.
The dream. Has the Barnacle of the Bay made it for Harrison Barnes yet?
I don't know, but maybe I could sponsor the Harrison Barnes page and get that done.
Yeah, that's the only nickname I know of for him.
I know. Well, there's so many ridiculous ones. I mean, the Marcus All one will be forever the most ridiculous
Big burrito?
one. Yeah. No, absolutely no one's ever said that. The big burrito.
Appropriate.
The big burrito. All right, Cleveland and Chicago are in the books. Schedule for the rest of the day. It's very simple. We do have 2 more hours worth of shows coming up after this. 6:30 on the dot. NBA Live Before Lock is starting. They will take you to 7:30. And we got to cut this off a little bit early. That's going to be 30 minutes before actual lock because we got to get NFL started. It's Monday Night Football. So Monday Night Football Live Before Lock will start up at 7:30 and take you to kickoff. So we're going to be here for a while, folks. We're got a lot of sports to talk about. So make sure you're hitting the like button now. We can build that number up before we turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. Well, here's one we're going to talk about quite a bit, but not for the first team. Washington Wizards, 12.5-point dogs in Houston, 228 total. Out of nowhere, Kyle Kuzma's just back. Bub Carrington questionable for this one. No ownership at all coming into this Wizards team. 7% to Joval on DraftKings is the high mark. You get to 7 for Koulibaly on FanDuel. Are you going to get any of the Washington Wizards today? Because they're sort of like the Chicago version of the last game.
Yeah, I got in the 150 set with Sim. I got less than 3% of Jonas Valanciunas, 2% Alex Sarr, 1% of Kuzma. That feels like more than enough Wizards here. The issue is these guys are not priced, like Josh mentioned. They're not priced for Kuzma to be in. And they've sort of been blossoming in their own roles without him. And now he's going to come back in and mess it up. So guys like Keyshawn George, who's shown some flashes. He's priced for this role where he can shoot 17 threes in a game and nobody's going to check him on it. With Kuzma back in, it's not going to happen. Valanciunas, even, he needs to suck up every point and rebound. It's going to go his way for him to be useful. And 20 minutes of projected court time with Kuzma back in, that sort of upsets that. Bub Carrington, just deferring any sort of usage for him is not going to help. Even Poole, he's priced up now for this role without Kuzma as well. So these guys, I don't think a single one of them is really playable. If one of them were to hit in a tournament, it wouldn't be insane. But like projection wise, we're talking like not even close to playable, I think, projection wise.
No, I think so. Joval was like oddly chalky in ownership this morning during the strategy show. That has obviously come down as expected. But now he's the guy that I think you would want to get to because at least he's a ridiculous per minute dude. And on a 5-game slate, if he drops 30-ish, actually, let me look what I have at the score. Where do I have Joval hiding? Yeah, I mean, 30, can you get 35, 36, somewhere in that neighborhood? Could be decent depending on what else you see from some centers, especially at 5,600. So he'd be the guy I'd be looking at. Other than that, I mean, it's a really tough sell to try to get to them now with Kuzma back. It just where you add in like a 27% usage guy, you take away 28 minutes from, a lot of it is down the rung dudes, but like this impacts everybody and makes it really, really difficult to want to get to anything here. Whew. God, I hate the Wizards. So winning lineup tonight, 2 Bulls, 2 Wiz.
Yeah, and there's going to be like not in any top projected lineup at all. Look, it can happen. It's just you look at the numbers here and like I don't know how you would want to play a single Bull or a Wizard really. Like they're not projected well enough even for a 5-game slate.
Slightly different sentiment on the Houston side with no Fred VanVleet today, which I was not anticipating when we did everything this morning. So he's gone. Jock Landale is out. Steven Adams still questionable, which will definitely change. As weird as it sounds, that will change up this slate a little bit and, change up the minutes to Şengün and Jabari Smith. So it's still something to pay attention to at least a little bit. All right, buckle up. Here's the ownership, folks. 20 to 30% for Jalen Green between DK and FanDuel. 15 to 20 for Dylan Brooks. 85 to Amin Thompson on DraftKings. 75 on FanDuel. 60 on DK for Şengün. 50 on FanDuel. 10 to 20 between Jabari Smith for both sites. And right around 50 for Tari Eason on both. And now 25% ownership coming into Reed Shepherd. I think we could probably just put the easy stuff to bed first. I think Amin Thompson is the easiest play to get to on today's slate. Sub 5K price tag, shooting guard, small forward eligibility, has the ability to take on extra minutes, even more so than what are currently projected, and probably the best point per dollar play you can get to. He's the easy name to click on as I see it.
I mean, do you think he starts or do we think Reed Shepherd, who's been basically the direct backup for VanVleet, picks up start? Because I think that's sort of the question I have looking at the minutes projections now.
I'm guessing they start Thompson.
And then Shepherd plays his usual minutes.
I wouldn't be shocked if they started Aaron Holiday.
He hasn't even in the rotation. I mean, because like they could start him, they give him less minutes. Shepherd maybe picks up a little bit more.
Yeah,
but Holiday's been entirely out of the rotation though, right? Like I don't think
he has, but they just removed a 36-minute point guard.
Right, but
if they want to maintain their bench rotations and just slot Aaron Holiday in like that at the beginning of the first and third quarters, and then move about their day for closing rotations, I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think they're going to do it, but I think they can. but I'm assuming Thompson starts.
So what do we have? You have Reed Shepard's minutes at because Stokastic has him at 21.4. They had him higher earlier in the day, and I was getting more Reed Shepard, but still not a lot because he just hasn't played that well, produced that well in the year. 0.67 fantasy points per minute for people who are curious about that. But like if you have more minutes, he's basically minimum salary, so I think he's kind of interesting. But if he's not starting and he's coming off the bench, like I don't think he's actually playable really.
Yeah, I went 20 minutes. I'd be very surprised if he starts. Um, Again, not wouldn't be shocking at all to reward him with a start in this situation, particularly against the Washington Wizards, where you can probably be a little bit more loose with the decisions you want to make. But yeah, I'm expecting Thompson. I didn't get to much Reed Shepard here. Could he go out there and just rain threes against this garbage team? Yeah, absolutely. But if he's not starting, I'm at least a little apprehensive. The price is great. Like he's still a good value, but it does make me at least a little nervous.
Yeah, I got 8% of him. So like the field's going to be at about a quarter of the field owning him. I would not want to own him at that rate if he's going to come off the bench. If he's starting, I could walk off the plank with everybody, I think, and take that shot in the hopes that he has the best game he's had yet because he is a producer in every category. 20% assist rate on the year, 15% usage, 6% rebound rate, flash a little bit more in the preseason and summer league, I think, in terms of the overall upside there. So that's key decision point to me. Reed Shepard, I think, right away. So I won't own him if he's not starting. And right now I've got 9%. Thompson, I'm a little bit lower on though. I don't know how you get to 85% of him. That feels like a lot. Dual position eligibility, can slot in at guard and forward. But I got 54% Amin Thompson, and I feel like that's enough. Granted, I am a little bit lower than Stokastic. I've got him at 30.2 fantasy points today.
I got 31-1. I got 60% of him.
Okay.
But like just on paper, I mean, he's the first name you're clicking for every cash game. It's just the positionality and price are just way too efficient. What you want to do in a GPP relative to ownership, very different discussion. And I wouldn't be surprised to see 85 come down a hair. But I actually did get to more of Tari Eason, who is 50% owned on DraftKings, 4,800, small forward, power forward eligibility. I think gets an even bigger benefit if we find out Steven Adams is out, although they probably go to what Jeff Green probably plays a little bit in that end at that point. Forget that he's on the team. But if Thompson's not your cup of tea for today, you kind of have to make it be Eason then. It's got to be one of the two at a minimum. It's both, but it's got to be one of the two.
Yeah, I have Eason beating Thompson out by 1 fantasy point. So that's part of why I'm getting more Eason. I'm getting 67% Eason compared to 52% for the field, and then getting 54% Thompson compared to the 85% for the field. So kind of flipping them a little bit there. Eason's been a good producer, as I mentioned a few times when we've talked about him on the show. Like you are still kind of paying the price tag from having a few outlier days where I think the production was a little bit maybe hard to live up to, but still a guy on the year, 1.15 fantasy points per minute. I'd have him at 1.2 tonight. Rates look a little bit better in the court time over the last year without Van Vliet. So I like Easton more than Thompson if you could only play one of them, but I think both are certainly credible to play together. I don't think they pull from each other that much.
Who's your next favorite play here?
So relative to the ownership I'll have overall, it would be Şengün. I've got Şengün in 35%. Relative to how much I have more than the field, I've got Jalen Green at 29. So I think he's a more important play to me. He's actually been very good over the last year with Van Vliet off the court, 31.5% usage, 20% assist rate, 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I think the field is treating this right now like everything's going to benefit Şengün, and he'll benefit a little bit. But if you give Green a little bit more of the reflective of the rates of what he's had, I think Green looks like a better play, and Şengün's still good, but he's not like a 50-point play like I think the Stokastic data has him at right now.
So you're right now I'm basically right with the field on Green. I'm actually a hair higher on Dylan Brooks than the field. I'm about half the field of Alperen Şengün right now. And that doesn't surprise me because I've got a decent stand on Jared Allen at lower ownership. I've got, let's see, I had somebody else at center that was like disproportionate. Maybe that went. Oh, I had a bit of Joval that the field wasn't really getting to at this point. I've got a pretty decent chunk of Sabonis as well. So I still have 35% of Şengün. It's not like I'm ignoring him or anything crazy, but I am coming in under that like heavy chalk number. Looks great though. 7,900 has the opportunity to play a couple extra minutes today if it breaks that way. Continue. It could just close and play 30 plus pretty easily. They haven't been doing that, but when you're down a starter, maybe that changes up the equation a bit. Are you getting to any Dylan Brooks?
With the field on him, I got 20% compared to the field's 21. So he projects okay for me. I've got him at 23.4. So I'm zero point 0.1 above the Stokastic number of 23.3. But lack of dual position eligibility probably drops down a little bit. He's just small forward. But I think he looks okay. Just not as big of a stand for me relatively as I think Jalen Green is.
Hmm. Oddly enough, like I basically had like no impact to Jabari Smith. He's just kind of like a 10% guy, but he's the one dude that scares the hell out of me because he could just as easily play 30 minutes and you probably want him in that scenario. Like he's the one where I'm a little surprised that it's as light, but his minutes have just been so unappealing. 26, 17, 24, 22, 37. If what happens if that's today, you know? I don't love the idea of just like kind of setting him to the side.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get him. I got him 5%. Fields projected
Yeah.
for 10%. He's been playing terribly on the year, under 0.8 fantasy
Yeah.
points per minute. That's certainly, I think, part of the issue. I today have him at 0.95 with just the longer term sample size and a little bit of a rate boost without Van Vliet. And even with that, like I still only got him at a 25.9 point projection. So Jabari Smith, I think if you want to try to sneak up on somebody with Houston, he'd be the one to try to do it with. But I don't know if the upside's there like it was at points last year. It felt like he was a different player at points last year.
Yeah, it's a very different scenario for him right now. I don't love it. I don't love it. He'll be very intriguing to me. I'm guessing if we get the Steven Adams news and Steven Adams is out, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up heavier on Jabari Smith than the field, and I use that as like a spot to hope that he just gets an extra, 2 minutes or so and projects a little bit better. I see that coming. I'm not expecting to get to Reed Shepard. I'm okay with it, but it's the only part that concerns me is just like if he gets hot, it's going to be fun and he's going to be owned. And that's going to annoy me if he's like, I open up the app and Reed Shepard's 6 of 6 from three, and you're just like, okay, well, it's over now. Had to have him.
There were a team to do it against too. This is the matchup to do it. So that's why I think if he's starting, I would just take the leap on Reed Shepard at 3,100 off the bench. It's just I don't know. You take that shot.
Yeah, if he's starting, you can't. It's going to be incredibly difficult to avoid. Way too cheap. 3,100 point guard, shooting guard eligible, and then you're projecting, at a minimum 24 minutes if you're trying to tell yourself like you don't think he closes, but probably even more than that. At which point, he is the best play on the slate. So that'll be something to pay attention to. Anything else here for Houston?
No, I mean I do think Aaron Holiday with just the 17.9 minutes he gets from Stokastic, borderline playable at a 3K flat minimum salary, only point guard eligible. Not one I'm crazy about, but it is a short enough slate here. We're having that 3K guy. And Aaron Holiday, a good enough per minute producer over the course of his career, would have him at 0.84 fantasy points per minute today. If he were to get real run, he might actually do something useful. But everything else here, the chalk is a chalk for a reason. It's just how much you want of those guys, I think.
Let's talk about the beginning of this game. The Brooklyn Nets, 1.5 point favorites in New Orleans, 211 total. Brooklyn is still just without all of like their backup bigs. No Day'Ron Sharpe, no Trendon Watford. We did get the Q tag on Dorian Finney-Smith, which will certainly have some impact for this team. Got about 30% ownership coming into Nick Claxton. Got about 10 coming into Ben Simmons. Just about everybody else is in single digits. Cam Johnson snuck a little bit over that number. How are you handling the two guys getting ownership for right now in Claxton and Simmons?
So Simmons, I was getting a little bit more with an earlier sim I ran. Now I'm down to 4% of him. Some enough the value opened up, I think, from Houston probably threw me off of that for the most part. So instead of getting Simmons like I was getting before, I'm getting Amin Thompson instead, which feels a lot better anyway. Claxton, I'm with the field on though. I got 28% of him. I was actually surprised to get that much because it looks like his name got changed around in the Sims and he's Nicholas Claxton, and I'm getting 0% ownership. I'm like, wow, I'm really over on him. But no, I'm actually getting 30%. So basically, with the fields, 30%. And he looks okay here. As Josh mentioned, no backup bigs left at this point. I guess Clowney playing some minutes is basically it. Now, Claxton's been producing pretty well, 1.05 fantasy points per minute on the year. Match against New Orleans, who now doesn't have a real center you're worried about at all. Feels like a good spot for Claxton to get going. So I'm okay with that ownership. Everything else here, I feel like when Simmons plays, I just like everything less. And Simmons himself, to me, I don't want the 12% ownership with kind of the value that's opened up.
At the moment, I have a bit of Simmons. That'll end up coming down a bit. I think the last time I said that, you actually needed him in the winning lineup, so I don't want to do too much and talk myself out of it. But I do have a chunk of him. I am neutral to the field on Nick Claxton, but GPP play alert. I got one here. Cam Thomas, 5% owned today against a Pelicans team that is basically a made up roster. Sorry to Trey Murphy for you coming back. I have 25% of Cam Thomas, and I'm like extra special cool with it on a day like today.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that doesn't really get hurt by Simmons coming back in, whereas like Schroeder's just a different play at that point because he doesn't get to
Yeah.
dominate the ball as much. Cam Thomas maybe gets set up a little bit more easily for a few shots, so that probably is worth the trade-off of a few possessions.
Yeah, so he's in 25% of my stuff at 5% ownership. That's sort of like one of the main GPP flyers that I'm taking. And I mean, this is a guy that's going to shoot all game, no matter what. That dude just guns. And I will always take my chances, particularly in a team that's going to start Jose Alvarado, Brandon Boston, Brandon Ingram, Jeremiah Robinson, Earl, and Yves Missi. Like, yeah, I'm in for whatever's happening here on the Brooklyn side. I think I mean, they're the favorites in this game. If they're expected to win, like, isn't Cam Thomas a pretty damn big part of that?
Isn't he an LSU guy too, or wasn't he?
Oh, I have no idea.
Back in Louisiana. Yeah.
Yeah, went to LSU. There you go. Homecoming alert too.
Yeah.
All right, pour one out for Sean V on that one. He probably would have told us earlier this morning.
Yeah.
Although went to high school in Virginia, but went to LSU.
Yeah, they all love Louisiana down there. How could you not?
Dude, any guesses where he was born?
Anchorage, Alaska.
Nope. Close.
Washington State.
Getting colder.
Oh, so wait. So how's it? Hawaii?
Kanagawa, Japan.
Oh, okay. Hey, guy you wouldn't expect with Asian roots. Hey, we're popping up everywhere, Josh.
Yeah, Kanagawa, Japan.
Military brat, maybe?
I don't have a clue. Not a single clue.
It's like Virginia, and that would make me think maybe at a base.
Yeah, I mean, Oak Hill was Virginia, so he was going for basketball at that point. I don't know what Oscar F. Smith is in Chesapeake. Maybe that is, but once they found out he was good at basketball, they were like, whatever you're doing, go to Oak Hill. Before we hit the Pels, actually, do you have anything else here for Brooklyn?
No, nothing really. I think those are the main guys. Got 1% of Finney Smith. That's it. But yeah, nothing of note.
All right. So quickly, there is a link in the description of this video. Jordan's going to drop one in chat. If you're interested in signing up at Stokastic, our partners have really good deals. So if you'll click that link, you'll show up on a page. You'll see a bunch of different links for pick'em sites and sports books like Underdog or Better or Sleeper, Bet365 or Caesars. Each one of them is going to have a different deal, bonus bets or deposit bonuses. You can take that offer, make your deposit, and get 1 month of whichever sports sims you're looking for. So it costs you nothing to use this link for us. You'll end up with a month of one of our sims and all of the data behind it. All you'll need to do is make that qualifying deposit, follow the instructions that are listed on the page, and you'll also be getting some sort of other benefit at whichever site you're signing up for. It's really an absolute no-brainer offer. If you have any interest in all in being at Stokastic and you either haven't signed up at these sportsbook or pick'em sites yet, or you're looking to try a different one, the links are there for you guys. It's very simple. Just click them, follow the instructions at the top, and you'll end up with a month at Stokastic, plus some other stuff. New Orleans Pelicans. So their season is basically over. Zion out for the foreseeable future. Murray still out with the hand fracture. Welcome back, Trey Murphy. CJ's probably back in a week or two. Herb Jones still out. Jordan Hawkins out. Carlo Makovich out. So it's still pretty ugly in these parts. 3 guys are getting ownership, and no one else on the team is getting anything. Brandon Boston is like 10 to 15, FanDuel to DraftKings. Jose Alvarado is 36 on DraftKings, 25 on FanDuel. And then Brandon Ingram is sort of the inverse, 25 on DraftKings, 40 on FanDuel. What are you doing with those 3 guys? And then let me know if you're getting to anybody else.
I am getting an insane amount of Ingram and Alvarado. Both guys have been very good producers without the other guys on the court. Ingram's one of those things for me, and I think we all have these in DFS where it's like these certain plays you make every time you know somebody's going to be out, and you have your Giannis out, you play Portis, like that kind of thing that everybody knows. Then there's some that I think people don't know as much. And like whenever Zion's been out, I've played Ingram. Like that's generally been a thing that's worked pretty well, even with McCollum in there. We got that on Friday, and the issue is on Friday went incredibly terribly because A, Brandon Ingram picked up foul trouble. B, it was against Orlando, who's not as good defensively as they've been in the past, but still good enough, I think, to clamp down on Ingram. He had an awful day as a result. But if they get in this game, it's like it's on the back of Ingram. Alvarado's also been really good on the year. When McCollum's not out, there were and Zion as well. 1.2 fantasy points per minute for him. So these guys, I'm crazy over the field. And I've got 70% Alvarado, 55% Ingram. I'm going heavy on them because I just don't think Brooklyn's got the dogs to blow them out. And I think they're good enough. And I think people aren't on the scent because of how bad that Orlando game was. So total, I think, supports it. I think going heavy to New Orleans. So a lot of Ingram, a lot of Alvarado for me, and with the field on Brandon Boston.
I'm basically either right at or under on all of these guys. I have 11% of Boston at 15. I've got 20 of Alvarado at 36, and then I've got 23 of Ingram. And there's basically zero chance another one of these dudes end up in a lineup. They're all either bad per minute dudes or not even going to be remotely close to the amount of minutes that you need. Like Jeremiah Robinson Earl, for example, is not a good per minute fantasy producer, which is tough to do as a big. But those first three guys, Boston, Alvarado, Ingram, like, yeah, I'm happy to work my way through them. I wouldn't mind if I had more of any of those three guys. It'd be totally cool with me because they look good, and I'm gonna have a chunk of Brooklyn on the other side. You know, if Cam Thomas gets going, like it's gonna be nice to have Boston or Ingram in a lineup alongside of them, but not a huge stand. A little surprised. It's probably the total. This is the game with the lowest pace. This is the game with the lowest total. I think there's just unquestionably a lack of offensive talent on both sides of the ball here with the amount of injuries or the fact that Brooklyn is Brooklyn. But just like the dudes that look good, look good.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have Ingram projected for 28 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. Like things really go the right way for him. I think he can put up a triple double. Like he's done it before when there's been usage to go around. So, and honestly, Alvarado, like I kind of had him file away as my head as like one of these fill-in kind of scrub guys. He's kind of evolved into like JJ Barea-esque, like not quite as great of a fantasy producer, but he produces in every category you want. Takes a little more usage than you would see, assists at a good clip. So I like these guys today hanging in the spot. Fact they're not crazy chalk, I think is a good thing. Because I think they would be very chalky if they had had that success against Orlando, and now they got blown out in that game. But Brooklyn's no Orlando, even without Big Hero.
I hope you bet Brandon Ingram's overs.
Yeah, I mean, I got him on over on everything.
Yeah. Nice. The only guy I'll ask about, any Eve Misi?
No, he's not a player at 5K I want to get to. Feels like there's something here with just him getting the amount of court time he's getting, but still 23.7 minutes at 5K. It's like he would have to be really efficient per minute, and he's not even a fantasy point per minute guy. He's at 0.83 on the year. So not producing as well as I would like to get there. I'd rather, honestly, I think, have Jalen Smith at his cheaper price tag.
Sounds good. Now we go to the Clippers and OKC. I don't even want to talk about the Thunder. It just makes me sad. Clippers, 6.5-point dogs in OKC, 218 total. For the Clippers, it's business as usual. Everybody that you normally have here is here. And Kawhi Leonard is definitely somewhere else. The highest owned guy on DraftKings for the Clippers is 6% to Zubats. The highest owned guy on the FanDuel side is either 7% to Harden or 7% to Chris Dunn. Not looking good for getting to the Clippers. I was hoping that I was going to get a bunch of Zubats because I think he is in a very unique spot today. But I only got to 6%. I'll probably boost him a hair when I run my stuff later because I kind of just want to have him. Mentally, if Oklahoma City can't make a shot, Ivica Zubats is going to have every rebound every time. But otherwise, I don't know, a little bit of Harden and nothing. I mean, this team looks terrible.
I think the Harden, Zubac, Powell part looks okay. The issue is like there are guys a little bit cheaper who project a slightly better values. There are guys who project a little bit better projection overall with, a little bit of a higher price tag. There's ways to get away from these guys. And Powell in particular, like Powell's playing well in the year, but his price tag has come up so much. To see him at over 7K is like egregious, even with the dual position eligibility. So I got 15% Harden. I like him. I feel like he's been basically old school Harden at this point. 30% usage on the year, 40% assist rate, 1.33 fantasy points per minute. All look good. I'm with you on the game theory of Zubac just not having a big out there. Like he should be able to soak up as many rebounds that he wants out there, especially in that first stint. So first quarter rebound overs. Somebody put me on that on the Splash Play channel. And I think that's a good bet too for Zubac. I like these guys more than, and I thought I'd get them more, but frankly, Harden's the most for me at 15, got 9% Zubac and then 3% Powell. So I'm above on all these guys, but they're just not, they don't fit, I think, structurally with what the Sims think are good lineups.
I only got 9% of Harden and 6% of Zubats. I don't have a soul anywhere else. I definitely like Norm Powell a lot more on FanDuel, where he's basically unknown. I mean, Zubats, Powell, and Harden are all 7% or below on FanDuel. I think they all look better there. Zubats is a little bit cheaper. You're only playing one center, but I mean, I get the appeal in a matchup like this. The Powell's got great positionality. I like him as a GPP pivot, and then I'm willing to pay 9,600 for Harden on the FanDuel side again as some sort of GPP style pivot. Maybe you just want to get away from Shea on the opposite side, who is 4 times as owned.
Yeah.
So now we got to get into. Go ahead.
Similar outcomes too, I would say, for these guys, for Harden and Shea. Like I
Yeah.
don't have them projected that far off. I still got more Shea because I think the salary works well in the slate for the DraftKings side. But I think in terms of a play, I don't view Harden and Shea as that different of a play. Obviously, more theoretical opportunity for Shea with no Holmgren out there.
So yeah, if you guys didn't see the news, Chet Holmgren fractured his iliac wing of his hip, which just blows. So he is going to be out for probably till March. Isaiah Hartenstein's still out, left hand fracture. You know, he will be back eventually, and that's not something you should expect to be like recurring or anything. But Jalen Williams with the center version with a Y also out. So they're missing a bunch of dudes. It's not great. There's a lot of ownership coming in here. 25% to Shea, 25% to Jalen Williams, 25% to Lou Dort, 10 to Wallace, 10 to Joe, 18 to Aaron Wiggins. The one good piece of information that we got for Oklahoma City is that Kenrich Williams is back. So while he may not be truly center size, that is going to be someone that plays at least a couple minutes at the 5 for the Thunder today to go along with Dylan Jones and Oozing Dong, and they got some other made-up Dutch guy on the team that could probably eat 1 or 2 minutes if they needed him to. I am aggressively fading the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm surprised by it, but I have basically zero Shea. I have a tiny bit of Jalen Williams. I basically don't have Lou Dort. I'm very, very nervous about what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I have the opposite of you. I'm with the field on Shea, with the field on Jalen, a little bit higher on Jalen, aggressively over the field on Dort and Wiggins. The dual position eligibility for both guys, pretty good projections. I worry a little bit about it because the rates certainly should go up a little bit without Holmgren out there. Just more peripherals to go around pretty much across the board. But do they really just fall to the wing guys naturally? I'm not sure about that. But I think the price points work pretty well. These guys are both around 4K, 4,100 for Dort, 4K flat for Wiggins. So I am with those guys pretty heavily. I've got 50% Wiggins and 44% Dort, and I think they make lineups work well. So I'm okay with it, even though clearly the big ticket guys, SGA and Jalen Williams, like should be the priority here because they probably have a 70-point ceiling on the slate.
Yeah, I would definitely like to have a little bit more of these dudes. I am not at all happy with what I'm getting. I don't really think. I mean, maybe I'm a bit light on Jalen Williams, but I don't really expect me to move Shea all that much. The only guys that I got are 14% of Isaiah Joe and 11% of Aaron Wiggins. The rest is all sub 10%. I'm terrified by it. But, you know, like some game is going to be awful. Maybe I have to get lucky and hope that it's here. But I have enough salary to get to Shea, and I'm really surprised that it's not happening. I'm nervous.
I am too. Is there a shot Oozing? I hate saying this. Oozing Dong. Is there a chance that he would start here? You know, just maybe some counterpunch to Zubac, because I know last game Holmgren went out. They put in Isaiah Joe, but obviously that was against Golden State, right? So like you don't have to put in Jang.
I would imagine they would start Dylan Jones.
Okay.
Over Jang, because Dylan Jones is actually a body that has some size, whereas Ousmane Jang is very much not. Just at least based on my sheet, Oozing Dong is 185 pounds and whatever the hell 82 inches corresponds to. Dylan Jones is 235 pounds, a couple inches shorter, but I think I don't think the length is going to be the problem for Zubats. I think he'd go right through Jeng. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Dylan Jones just to put a body out there. But I also wouldn't be surprised at all if they just go small and, do what they're going to do. Whether that's, I don't know how much Kenrich Williams can play. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's him. All these guys, I expect to only play like 12 to 14 minutes, though.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is like there doesn't seem like there's one obvious beneficiary, but I would love it if there was something that cleaned up here that you kind of thought there'd be one. And I was like, I would like it to be Jang for the center eligibility in a 3,100. But yeah, it like doesn't seem like based on the minutes projections, anybody here stands out as a big.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you don't go at Zubats with the noodle guy. I think you need like a tree stump. Be how I mean, he's gonna get everybody. Like, they're gonna rotate through every single one of these dudes, which is part of the reason I have no idea who really is going to be the fifth starter. But Zubats is just gonna. I mean, who's gonna get like the Thunder were already not a good rebounding team.
Yeah, I would like to get some more Zubac. I think that him with Allen, him with Şengün, I think it was an appealing option to me. It's just the projection's not all the way there, and he's a little bit too high priced.
Yeah.
And that's tough because like, yeah, the ceiling is just as high as I think any other center on the slate.
It's all gross, but I don't expect to get to any of those crazies. Williams, Jones, Oozing Dong, all that crew. Wow, Lonzo Ball without a timetable for a return. Just got done talking about. Oh, Dorian Finney-Smith out, by the way.
Oh, that's up a little minutes.
Yeah, so that'll tweak some stuff, at least a hair. But yeah, look, I don't have as much. I'm not as much on OKC. Spags is on OKC. Our slight disagreement for today as we move our way to the final game of the slate. The Sacramento Kings, 1-point favorites in San Antonio, 221 total. I need one more call for likes, folks. We got about 1,900 of you in the door. We're at about 200. 83 more should just happen at the snap of the fingers because we want to get these guys there for live before lock. But I feel like 400 is in our sights. So knock that one down, guys. All right. So no Malik Monk for Sacramento today. He rolled his ankle yesterday in the second quarter. We got a decent chunk of ownership coming into these guys. Quite a bit more on the FanDuel side than the DraftKings side. Murray's 10. DeRozan's around 10. Fox and Sabonis are both around 15. Herter's around 20. Herter is also 50 on FanDuel. Fox is 30. DeRozan's 30. Murray and Sabonis are both 15. Even Keon Ellis is getting into the equation on FanDuel at 13% ownership. This is a team I'm a bit over the field on. 2xing Murray, close to 2xing Fox, 2xing Sabonis, a little bit over on Herter, neutral with DeRozan. So I think I'm making up for a little bit of my non-OKC by grabbing some Sacramento.
The Sacramento looks pretty good. I'm not there as much on everybody here. I'm basically at 15% Sabonis, 15% Fox, 7% DeRozan. So he'd be my least preferred one of the group. And he's, I think, sacrificing the most usage-wise out of all the guys on the team so far. I like Keegan Murray the most. I've got 3x the field on him. He's projected for 9%. I've got 30. Keegan Murray, I think, getting the benefit of just the extra usage floating around from Malik Monk, Sabonis, Fox, DeRozan. Certainly pick up some of that, but like they need somebody to kind of step up to take more off the plate. I think Keegan Murray fits that well. I think the same theory could apply for Herter. These guys, I'm sure I'll play them together in some lineups, but I do think they kind of pull from the same part of what they're taking away that Malik Monk leaves behind. But Keegan Murray to me looks like a very good play at power forward, 6,200 on DraftKings. I've got him projected for mid 30s, which is definitely higher than Stokastic. So feel free to default to the site made by the $1 million DFS players and all that. But Keegan Murray, I think, looks good, and Herter a little bit above the field on him. So taking pieces from this game seems like an important part of the slate, no matter what.
Amin Thompson will start for Fred VanVleet.
There we go. All right, so no Reed Shepherd.
So I have 120% of Sacramento. They're projected for 80. So, an extra 50% bump for myself. I'll take that. Or, yeah. Devin Vassell will continue to play off the bench today. So, yeah, I'm going to be rotating through that entire Sacramento rotation and not mad about it at all. But guy I'm most over the field on is probably Sabonis. But doubling up on Murray at sub 10% ownership is appealing. Do you have any interest in Keon Ellis? Because he does have a much cleaner path to like 30 minutes today if it goes that direction.
I didn't get any of them. I've got him projected at 17 fantasy points, which might just be a little bit too low for him, even with the point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Stokastic has him at 18.1. I get you a little bit closer, but still under the threshold. I think where he'd come up a lot. But 25 minutes, not bad. He's been producing 0.7 fantasy points per minute on the year. I see why I'm not getting him. I certainly get also too why there might be a little more upside than the numbers would kind of give you.
Yeah, I don't have him either, but he's definitely a guy that I would not mind at all having in some of the larger field contests, just because like if you knew right now that Kevin Huerter played 22 minutes, you'd be significantly more interested in Keon Ellis just by default. So, and that is absolutely something that could happen today. If Huerter's shot's not falling, if something like maybe Devin Vassell's cooking on the opposite side and they want to have Keon Ellis out there for more defense, it's a very easy swap for them to make. And then we get to San Antonio. 11% ownership to Victor Wembanyama on DraftKings, 12 to Stephon Castle on FanDuel, single digits for everybody else. Basically zero ownership to anybody on DK. You get a little bit of incremental stuff for Wemby, Champagny, and CP3 on the FanDuel side. I have 9% of Castle on DraftKings and nothing else from San Antonio. Honestly, scares the hell out of me to not have Wemby.
Yeah, I don't have Wemby at all either. I got 1% of him. I mean, the consolation is like, he's kind of not playing like the same guy this year, down to 1.42 fantasy points per minute. He's not little Giannis, like in terms of how I think I'd have perceived his numbers last year. And also you have Vassell coming back in. Vassell, small sample size, but so far 33% usage, 20% assist rate. So when he's out there, he's taking, about 50% of the possessions away. I think that's not helping out. I think Wemby's biggest issue is like before you had Sohan shooting too much. Chris Paul's clearly deferring. He's at 16.4% usage on the year. But like guys like Vassell and Sohan are not deferring. They're kind of actively taking possessions away from Wemby. I think that doesn't help him when you have guys who are dominating the ball a lot more. FanDuel, Wemby, always a play that can break a slate. So I get going there more. But on DK, I feel like I could live without him on the slate. Like this isn't really a pay up, or I feel like I need to pay up slate. And for Wemby, maybe that means that he's going to break the slate, but 10% ownership, I don't feel like that's so cheap either. I have to force my way there and ignore the projection data.
Yeah, like I think he should be around 10% owned. He didn't happen to show up for me right now. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up with 5 to 10 by the time this entire process is over. But none of these guys look all that great. Like I've got them pretty easily sub 5 value, which isn't good. I mean, the rest of this team looks straight dreadful. I wouldn't even know how to get to Champagny or Barnes or CP3 or Keldon Johnson. I don't really see any of it for any of these guys. I thought I would because it's just a better spot. It's not like Sacramento's defense is a believable good. I think they have been a bit better than you would think so far this season. But yeah, like I don't know. Vassell being back and like grabbing usage really does have like a mild effect on the rest of these guys. I'm just permanently terrified for Wemby though, because all you have to do is open that box score and you're like, oh my God, he's got 7 blocks and 4 steals, and it doesn't really matter what else he does because that's a shit ton of fantasy points that he's already accrued from stats that only he can do. And no one else is doing that kind of line at this point, especially with Chet out with the old broken hip.
And especially with the chalk so congregated at center too, like he can break the slate and put you on a pathway that so many less people are on. So like there's a lot of I think game theory merits. I just I wish you were closer data wise. Like I don't even have about 50 fantasy points, and that is salary. That's a little bit tough.
Yeah, like obviously he's very likely to be the highest scoring center of the day, and if he does that, you're not gonna be super mad that you had him. It's just gonna sort of depend at that point on like what did Shea do. They're the only guys in like the same sort of salary tier right now. It's a hell of a slate, man. I love it. I'm excited to just pop the games on at 8 o'clock and just have a sprint to the finish line. It should be a good time. Weird. I got really weird exposures though tonight, so we'll see how that shakes out. No late swaps though. We just set it and forget it. Like we're making rotisserie chickens on a infomercial. That's the word I was looking for. Spags, let the people know where they can find you.
You can follow me at Chris Spags. And before I do these videos every day, 4 p.m., I go on at Splash Play NBA, look at my projections, compare to stuff Stokastic, look at Sims, look at prop markets. So that's my NBA home every day. And of course, glad to be here with Josh, learning about the players that I have no exposure to, that now I'm afraid to have no exposure to. That's the joy of this video.
Well, folks, you know what time it is. It's live before lock time.
Oh, yeah.
If you want it to be money time, go for it.
No,
give
it's
me
just
the,
I
give me
wear
what
the
you
hat
need.
now forward. I just wear the hat all the time. This hat, by the way, oh man, I feel like it does not smell great. I have to be honest.
Well, then buy another $2 version of it on Amazon and you'll be fine.
Well, no, what if it's gonna be a little bit different? I don't know. There was also like $20 on Amazon for the record. That's not, you don't spend that money.
Surely there are cheaper versions of that exact same hat out
No,
there.
because this is real gold. This it's like out of somebody's teeth fillings, I presume.
I have never been more confident that it may be gold, but I am quite confident that it is fool's gold. And on that note, hit the like button. Live before lock, guys, coming in next. 8 o'clock lock. Let's have some fun. I'll see you guys at the top. I'll wave back down at you. Later.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to a little bit of a different version of NBA Live before. Like, I mean, it's still Eric and I going for an hour, but we've got this weird overlap between the NBA and the NFL. The NBA also did this last Thursday, too, where they did, I think it was the exact same thing, either a 4 or 5 game slate that was locking at like the exact same time as the NFL slate. So just trying to figure out the best way to be able to appease everybody involved. We got Eric and I going from 6:30 to 7:30. We should have all of the news available by around then. And then right after that, we're going to have NFL Live before lock from 7:30 to 8:15 p.m. Eastern time to bring you guys up to NFL lock. So as you guys are watching, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll be hanging out on Discord too for the 30 minutes in between the show ending and the slate starting. So if anything does happen to break, you can ask me questions. I'll be hanging out in Discord. Other than that, hope you all had a great weekend. Eric, what's happening with you, man?
Not much. Ready to rock. A lot of news. Those kind of bouncing around. We have Kyle Kuzma playing out of nowhere. We have Fred VanVleet playing, not playing out of nowhere. So lots of stuff to kind of be apprised on. But it's nice to not have a true live before lock for NBA, considering like it'll be nice to just kind of do my own NBA lineups, not on a show for once.
Yeah, we will have a little bit of a grace period there while we wait for any late breaking news to come in. But I think what is the most important news to the entire slate, which you already kind of alluded to there, Fred VanVleet, he was ruled out this afternoon, and it happened very quickly. All of a sudden, Fred VanVleet, boom, not going to be playing today. We did also get word not all that long ago, as expected, Amen Thompson sliding into the starting lineup for the Houston Rockets. One thing I think immediately looking at this Rockets lineup, Eric, is who the hell is going to create plays for other people who are on the court? I guess Jalen Green's assist rate kind of has to go up by default because who else is going to be passing the ball to other people? Or maybe they're just going to play a lot of ISO ball today. Maybe they run some of the offense through Alperen Şengün tonight. I think that is certainly a possibility. But right off the bat, because I do think this is going to be the most important team on the entire slate from a value perspective, with the absence of Fred VanVleet, what are you going to be prioritizing from the Houston Rockets? And we'll talk about some of the ownership as we go here as well.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit is Amen Thompson. He's shooting guard, small forward. He is optimal 90+% of the time in our projections in the boom bust tool. I mean, he's just such an absolute smash now that he's starting. I just don't see any way away from it. It would take a lot of things to have to happen for him not to be in every single lineup for me. I think that's just kind of the way that everything started. I had him in 97% of my first 150 here. I bet I just end up lock buttoning him when it's all said and done. The other part for this is Alperen Şengün. The ball should be playing directly through him. He's under-owned at 59% ownership at 7,900 here. You talk about who's going to create plays for other people. It's Alperen Şengün. That's kind of who I think you end up playing through a lot more. His assist rate, he's only averaging, 4 per game, but you take Fred VanVleet off going back to last year, it looks a little bit more feasible here for him. I think Alperen Şengün is a big building block piece. I mean, you're kind of getting the certified double-double here. You go up against a Washington front court that, gets Kyle Kuzma back, but Alex Sarr, Jonas Valanciunas doesn't really matter. They don't have the pieces to deal with Alperen Şengün offensively. Tari Eason's kind of an interesting one at 4,800 because I am of the mind that if you're going to play Reed Sheppard on a slate this season, this is probably going to be the one. 3,100. I mean, it would take long-term injury or something else to have happen, but Reed Sheppard looked awesome in the preseason. There were some moments for him at 3,100 that it's like, how much do I really need the savings here with Amen Thompson as a savings piece, Tari Eason, but trying to get away from Tari Eason potentially and getting to some Reed Sheppard. Dillon Brooks, he's still going to be Dillon Brooks out there. Jalen Green, you said, the assist rate could maybe potentially go up. I see him just chucking against a Washington team. It's just too good of a matchup, not to just have these guys kind of littered throughout your lineups, but think relative to ownership. I mean, I'm surprised to see Reed Sheppard 25, 26% owned because there is a floor there for sure, but he could also be an absolute must-have piece. We could see him up to 24 minutes. It wouldn't completely shock me. It wouldn't shock me to see different iterations of a closing lineup too, where they don't necessarily have to have Amen Thompson out there, but I assume he would be. He's such a good fantasy producer going back to last season. I feel the most secure about him, but right now it is Amen Thompson on an island by himself. Alperen Şengün, probably somewhat close to the island, chilling on a raft. And then everybody else on this team. Tari Eason, a little bit overowned, but he falls into so many different lineups at 4,800 pretty easily that I'm okay with it, but I'm probably going to find ways to get away from it, maybe potentially with what Brooklyn does with their starting lineup.
Yeah, of all the players that are picking up ownership for the Houston Rockets, I find the easiest one to get away from being Reed Sheppard. Just for the reasons that you mentioned right there. We've got Reed Sheppard projected for 26% ownership over on DraftKings. Let's see, where's it at on FanDuel now? Reed Sheppard, lesser owned on FanDuel, just 7% from over there, where he's a little bit more expensive and also only a shooting guard eligibility. So whatever, ownership isn't really a concern. He's only 7% over on FanDuel. Although with that said, I'm not dying to roster him at a $3,900 price point. But as far as DraftKings goes, I have got a sim in front of me here. This is with all of the most recent updated information. And I've got Reed Sheppard in 10% of my lineup. So I find him somebody who, it's only a 5-game slate. So across 150 line, I'm sure he shows up in some, but I'm pretty far underweight to the field on him. So if I had to pick one Houston Rocket that I wouldn't be getting to, he's the guy. Now, what scares me is the Washington Wizards are absolute dog shit terrible. And there's a scenario here where people go and play Reed Sheppard. He's barely part of the rotation. The Rockets win via blowout because it's the Washington Wizards you're going up against. And then Reed Sheppard goes and scores like 20 fantasy points in garbage time. And I'm just beside myself at the end of the night. I could already see the writing on the wall, how this could go poorly for me. but I can't be playing lineups that have like 6 players from the Houston Rockets. And then when I'm trying to find out where I'm going to be cutting guys out relative to where the field is at on them, Reed Shepard's the one that I am most underweight to.
I get it. Again, the price tag makes it hard to not at least have some kind of interest. And I'm not trying to hedge anything. I mean, we're trying to finish first. If you ain't first, you're last. We're going to Ricky Bobby the shit out of it most of these slates. But I think at 3,100, he's probably going to end up in a couple more lineups. I have the same uncomfortable feeling as you do, where it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go underweight, of course the game blows out with Houston being 12-point favorites here and resting Fred VanVleet. And if you do play him, it's like, oh, of course he played 18 minutes and put up 8 fantasy points. Like there's a pretty wide range of outcomes for him compared to an Amin Thompson, compared to an Alperen Şengün, where it's going to be a little bit more of a tight distribution. So yeah, I think it's going to come down to ownership at the end of the day here. If he ends up 26, 27% like he currently is, I totally understand exactly what you're doing. I'll just continue to rerun stuff. And we need to get a Brooklyn starting lineup. That's going to be a huge part of this slate now too, as well, because I mean, do we get Noah Clowney in there starting? I'm hoping so instead of Ben Simmons for the sake of some of these other pieces, but there could be even more value on the way, which might make Reed Shepard lower owned and maybe a little bit more intriguing.
You meant Dorian Finney-Smith, who's out for the Nets.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I don't know who I said, but Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm just saying that like you could get. What I was saying is that you could get Noah Clowney starting here, and that would be at least something to think about with the lack of size there. Nicholas Claxton playing next to Noah Clowney, a little bit interesting, but yeah, lots of different iterations there.
Yeah, it could be a really dumb front court matchup because I do think it's going to be either Clowney or Simmons who takes the roster spot in the starting lineup for the Nets, which if that's the case, front court for the Nets it's going to be either Claxton and Clowney or Claxton and Ben Simmons. And on the other side for New Orleans, it's going to be Messi and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. So a real who's who of who's in the front court for that spot there. But I agree with you. Nets starting lineup, that is going to be important for us today. We've got Bub Carrington. He's questionable to play. It's funny. Do you remember Carrington? First lady started. He's min price. Doesn't
3K.
have a terrible game, but it's a pretty mediocre game. And everybody's up in arms. Like, why do we play this idiot Bub Carrington? Since then, he's been pretty damn good, not just from real life, not just from a fantasy perspective, but for real life. Yeah, he's a rookie, so he's been inconsistent and the shooting numbers haven't been there. But he's looked like a guy who could fill up the stat sheet. And if he is out of the lineup for the Wizards, that's another spot that we're going to have to pay attention to. It's the Washington Wizards. The team is bad. There's a number of directions they could end up going. And also with Kyle Kuzma in the mix, it's going to take away some of the responsibility from Carrington if he was to be in the lineup. But if Carrington is ruled out, is there anything you think you might be liking from the Washington Wizards in that scenario?
Yeah, Keyshawn George maybe, but Kyle Kuzma comes back. I mean, it's just such a wild thing. I think Bilal Coulibaly would look a little bit better here as well. That's a guy that I kind of had highlighted, circled. Some of his PRA numbers dropped. Everybody's did. 23.5 down to 20.5 here. Some 19.5s even for Bilal Coulibaly now. Pretty wild. His rebounding rate's definitely going to be affected with Kyle Kuzma out there, but decent enough, well-rounded enough guy there. Jordan Poole probably gets a bump up there in the assist category. As you said before, Carrington, he was 3K flat for that opening slate against Boston on the 24th, and since then, he's up to 6K. He's doubled that salary for a reason. He's averaging 5 and 5 in terms of assists and rebounds, along with 9.5. Definitely doesn't need to be out there with the ball in his hands to be effective. I mean, he's a real good basketball player. And from what I've seen so far, I like him. Draymond Green spoke his praises and Keyshawn George as well. But I think there's something to be said about who could end up being that guy coming off the bench who gets put into the starting lineup. My assumption is it's Keyshawn George that would end up getting the start next to him. You could play him at the 2 or below at the 2 and be just fine. Kuzma Sarr still probably your front court there. So I probably won't do a crazy amount with Keyshawn George at these prices, but it's at least interesting considering how much Houston interest we're going to have.
Important just because somebody brought this up in the YouTube chat. It was Bill Meyer. It said, do we keep our lineups up to date for injuries? Or do we just make them early and that's it? Yet never make your NBA lineups early in the morning, then forget about them because you are probably going to run into issues. Number one, you could be rostering players who get ruled out. Number two, you want to know who the best values are. Like if you built your lineups this morning, you're not even considering the Rockets. Well, not that you're not considering the Rockets guys because you're going up against the Washington Wizards, but you're not considering them the same way they are right now, where there are so many players from the Houston Rockets. And to get back to them, I think we talk about who the absolute must plays are for cash games from the Rockets. But like if you were building your lineups at, I don't remember what time Fred VanVleet got ruled out today, but let's say you were building your lineups at 9 a.m. Eastern time this morning. I'm fairly sure he hadn't been ruled out at that point. Well, you're probably not really considering Amen Thompson as that strong of an option. And now he's going to be in 100% of my lineup. So yeah, absolutely. You want to be keeping your lineups up to date, not just leading up into lock, but also, well, today there isn't going to be late swap because all the games lock at the exact same time. But typically you want to be monitoring everything after the slate starts as well. So you can be making any alterations to your lineups for any news that breaks after lock there. But talking about the cash game players from the Houston Rockets now, Eric, who are the players from Houston you would say are must plays in cash?
3 of them: Amen Thompson, Alperen Sengun, Tari Eason. You're playing those 3 in cash. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. There are no exceptions. Even if catastrophic news drops, you're probably still playing those 3. Like, it would have to take like massive pieces getting ruled out from another team out of the middle of nowhere for that to end up not being the case. So yeah, those 3 are locked and loaded in DraftKings cash.
Are there any players from the Houston Rockets who are lesser owned do you have some interest in? This kind of ties into, we got a question in Discord from Einstein, and he wants to know if we have any interest in Jabari Smith. And of all these players who are picking up ownership for the Houston Rockets, Jabari Smith isn't one of them. He's pulling 10% ownership at $5,200 on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, we currently have Jabari Smith pulling a little more ownership, 19% at $5,100, but still not like crazy chalk or anything like that. But I wanted to tie it into this question. Is there any player, and because Jabari Smith could be the answer, I understand what Einstein is getting at, but are there any lesser owned players from the Houston Rockets you have interest in? So we'll say anybody outside of Thompson, Sengun, Eason, and Reed Shepherd, because he's 26% owned. Any of the other guys that are of high importance. You got Dylan Brooks around 20%, Jalen Green around 20%. Are they going to get overweight to either of them, or is there a cheap guy that maybe isn't pulling ownership that you think the field is missing out on?
No, I don't. I mean, you could take a shot on Aaron Holiday. The main thing that happened for Houston in the last week is you had Cam Whitmore, who's generally a high usage, high fantasy point per minute guy. He got sent to the G League. And after that happened, I kind of had it starred circled for a situation like this. However, I think it's more interesting if you get like a Jalen Green ruled out where it's going to be tons of usage and somebody can just go spike a massive shooting upside. With Jalen Green out there, I think he just kind of eats up enough ownership there. So, I mean, out of anybody that's low, quote unquote, low owned, I think Jalen Green's probably the most interesting at 7,400. He's at 20%, but I have about the field on Jabari Smith at 8%. I have Aaron Holiday in 1 of 150. If you wanted to make that 3, 5, if you wanted to get to some Aaron Holiday where he just plays backup, some of those minutes, like there's no reason that Reed Shepherd can't slide over to the 2 and that, it could be like some kind of a line change in a blowout. I bet Aaron Holiday, I bet it's still Reed Shepherd that would end up closing in a blowout. Aaron Holiday, a veteran. That's kind of the other issue is like Jeff Green, he's been around the block. Aaron Holiday, been around the block. Jayshawn Tate, I don't really see being any kind of a thing here unless he just goes nuts in like 6 minutes of blowout run. But yeah, I can't say that there's any low-owned Houston piece that I've got my eye on here.
Yeah, you had mentioned the guy who's the answer for me. That's Jalen Green. Of all the players from Houston that I'm most overweight to, it's Green for me. And it's not because he's the player I have the most exposure to from the team. It's just that Amen Thompson's projected for north of 80% ownership. Even if you play 100% of them, you're kind of only marginally overweight to him relative to his ownership. If you get Sengun in half your lineups, you're actually underweight to the field to him. So for myself, I do think both Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green are viable options. We're going under owned, but I'm getting myself more to Jalen Green. The reason being was without Fred VanVleet on the court, you just have to look at the makeup of Houston and assume that means the ball is going to be in the hands of Jalen Green more. And the ball in the hands of Jalen Green means more shot attempts for Jalen Green against this Washington Wizards team. It doesn't mean he's going to have the best fantasy game. He's not a great real life player. He's tremendously athletic. There's a big upside for Jalen Green. Whether he's ever going to hit it, it remains to be seen. More likely not than he will. But I like the upside of Jalen Green, and I'm getting to him in nearly 40% of my lineups in the Sims, Eric.
Yeah, I'm right around that too. I like Jalen Green. I just got done with another run. He's not in 30%. He's in 28% of my lineups right now. I'll probably give him a little bit of a boost and maybe push him over the edge there. We have Jose Alvarado at the point guard spot, who is going to pull up some ownership. SGA without Chet Holmgren out on the floor, that's pulling some ownership, even against a decent defensive squad here. The front court with Norman Powell and James Harden a little bit more gettable, that's for sure. Yeah, just kind of going through some of these individual lineups, and it looks as though for me, it's just kind of like he's falling in no man's land a little bit there. We get this value at the 4K land with Tari Eason, with Amin Thompson, and it's just kind of getting me to some of the more expensive pieces. My Nuke of the Night isn't exactly cheap, but he's 8K, I suppose, and in that range. So it's kind of an interesting spot for me in tournaments where, yeah, if you want to make a pretty overweight approach to Jalen Green, the guy could legitimately have a 35% usage today.
Yeah, I think he's a really high upside GPP play. Okay for cash games, more for tournaments for me. For the question I asked you before about the cash games, the guys you absolutely have to roster from Houston in cash, it's Amin Thompson, Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason. Those are your guys there. Darren Unger left us a super chat. He wants to know, what do we make of Amin Thompson over on FanDuel? We've talked about him on DraftKings and how we're playing him in just about everything. On FanDuel, he's $5,600. He is also popular, playing, 74% ownership. So definitely a really strong play on FanDuel, but with him being a little bit more expensive on DraftKings, Eric, what do you make of the difference between the price point on Thompson on FanDuel relative to DraftKings, and how does that change his appeal as an option?
Yeah, I'm playing a little bit on FanDuel today just because, I have the time and the energy for it. I have 100% Amin Thompson. Nothing changes.
Yeah, he's the strongest overall play on the slate, Darren. If you were going to build lineups without him, I'd be more apt to do it on FanDuel than DraftKings. I currently have 96% of Thompson on DraftKings. And let's see if I favorite my top FanDuel lineups. I currently have Thompson in 95% of my lineups on FanDuel. So, hey, I got 1% of them less over here than over there. But yeah, he's the best overall play on the slate. Must play in cash games. Really strong GPP option. And yeah, best play on the slate. Not really too much else to add there. We've got a super chat here from RADM. He wants to know, who do we think benefits the most from Van Vliet being out, considering the over-under on assists? He was the Rockets leader in that. Şengün seems the obvious answer. Who else? He tried using Wowie, but wasn't really able to find what he was looking for there. So he is asking, from an assist standpoint, who is going to benefit the most from the absence of Fred Van Vliet? To me, it's Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün.
Yeah, those are the two. Alperen Şengün leads the way, 25.9% assist percentage with Fred VanVleet off the floor in 412 minutes over the last calendar year. You go down to Jalen Green at 20%, Aaron Holiday at 19.5%. And that's the largest minute sample because, again, when you didn't have Fred VanVleet on the floor, you had Aaron Holiday, but now they have Reed Shepherd, and that kind of puts another twist on it. Reed Shepherd's at just an 18.9% assist percentage in 89 minutes without Fred VanVleet on the floor. I've gone over this a number of times, and there's nothing in the marketplace to bet to try to react to it. The numbers all moved immediately, got taken off the board, and he reintroduced at appropriate numbers. But yeah, I would say the guy that's sneaky for DFS and everything that Greg was talking about here as well. Şengün's pulling all the ownership. Jalen Green, 20% assist percentage, and there's a world where he'll play 6-8 minutes independent of Şengün as well, where he could be the guy who legitimately leads the team at assist percentage when he's out there.
Yeah, I'm going to say Jalen Green is the guy who is going to benefit the most from an assist perspective overall there, RADM. But there's also a scenario where nobody has more than 5 assists on the team. That's also something. It doesn't, Fred VanVleet being out doesn't mean that somebody else has to all of a sudden put up a ton of assists. It could just be slight boosts across the board there. Brandon Wagner says, how does Ty Jerome look today on DraftKings? That he feels like he's very solid for the price. Ty Jerome, I assume he's min price. Let me see. He's not.
No, he's 3,800. This is not true at all. I don't know. Look, there are lots of games where Cleveland is going to blow teams out. I think on the road against Chicago here in this spot definitely is valid. Definitely is a spot to look at. He's played 19, 16, 21, 18 minutes here for Cleveland the last few. But my God, that's so thin still. You're asking for a very, very specific run out. It is a 236.5 total. It is the highest total that we have here on the board because, well, you have no defense being played by Chicago, and they will be up in pace, though. I find it hard to land on him at these kind of numbers because there's no reason that Karis LeVert can't be out there for extra minutes there. He has closed over Isaac Okoro in a couple of these spots recently, and we've seen those minutes kind of surge up, but like he's still going to be out there in like 10, 15 point game scripts, and that's 65, 70% of the time you're running into where it's going to be within, a check where you're going to not have Ty Jerome on there on the floor in blowout time, or you're going to have still Karis LeVert up, like showing up in like 50. It would take like a 20-point blowout, or he just smashes like we saw in like one or two of these spots where he was just knocking down shots, doing a lot of really good things for them. I think he's a real life decent enough ad for them off the bench. I mean, we've seen at Virginia, he's a decent enough defender. I just can't get behind that at 3,800. The guy was sitting at 3,600 last slate against Brooklyn. I saw some people already interested to click on him. If he's like 5% owned even, I would have zero interest whatsoever.
He doesn't project well at all for us relative to his price. And that was also, I haven't thought about Ty Jerome at all today. And I was just kind of assuming, well, he's probably min price, right? Honestly, even at min price, looking at our projections, I don't think he would show up in lineups, even if he was the flat 3K, Eric. We got him projected for 15.09 fantasy points on a slate that has a lot of value. It's just to your backing up exactly what you said. I'll use the same phrase. It's a very thin play at $3,800. It would be one thing if this was a 5-game slate where there was no value, but we've got a ton of value from Houston. You need Ty Jerome not only to get the minutes, you probably need a blowout in the Cleveland game. And then on top of it, you need him in his like 18 minutes to outscore all of the value pieces from Houston.
Guys, stop. I know he closed against Brooklyn. It was a back-to-back. That was the whole point of it. Like Ty Jerome played so freaking well for like that one stint that he had in the previous game that they're like, all right, well, let's put him out there at the beginning. And they didn't need to go back to anybody else for a major portion of it. Isaac Okoro got dinged up, only played 15 minutes there in that spot. It's a completely different situation. It's not on a back-to-back. It's sitting there on an island. Like, don't force in 3,800 plays because he did well in the box score the last 2 of 3 or whatever. Like, that stuff is not predictive. Also, relative to the Houston value that we have, there's ways that they fail and still outperform Ty Jerome from a point per dollar perspective. You need a lot to go right. As I said, I saw the ownership on him on a couple of these recent slates. People have taken notice, but now he's not 1%. Like, we haven't projected sub 1%. He's going to be 2 or 3%. I just know because we do this every single day and people are going to try to force him in. He is a terrible, awful, no good, very bad play.
Yeah, not for me today. Not for me on Ty Jerome. If we go back and look at some of the, was there another super chat here? Let me just make sure I answered all of those. Yeah, we answered those. So we'll get back into the Discord questions here. And if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to get access to our Discord channel, sign up for any package here at Stokastic. And the easiest way to sign up, well, if you want to just sign up using one of the links that we have down below in the YouTube description box. But also, you could check out our new affiliate join program here, where if you guys sign up at any of the sports books or pick'em sites they have down below in that link in the YouTube description box, just follow these 4 easy steps on screen. Scroll back up for a second there, Jordan. Read it off to people. Choose one of the books you want to sign up for. You have to use the link from that page. Sign up using the offer, deposit, place the bet. Take a screenshot of the welcome email on your first settled bet, because you're going to need to send that to support so News God could see it. Then you email that support@stokastic.com with the screenshots of the welcome email, the first settled bet, then tell us which league it is that you want. So do you want an NBA subscription? Do you want an NFL subscription? Whichever one you choose, you get 1 free month of core for each book you sign up at. You want to sign up for 12 books? Cool. You get a free year of any sport of your choosing, where you can do 6 months of NFL, 6 months of NBA. Each one you sign up for using that link, 1 free month. So go check it out if you guys are looking for a really affordable way to get access to our tools. And some of these books too have outlandish, like great first deposit offers where you might be depositing your money up to $1,000 you see there on Caesars. Some of the other ones, sleeper, first match deposit bonus up to $100. So you put in money, they're going to give you money on top of it. You get a free subscription to the site. Good deal all around for everybody.
Yeah, it's an incredible deal.
Here. So we do have another one that came in here. This was from Ryan Schnabel. Ryan Schnabel wants to know, it is Mitchell, Ingram, and Shepard. Okay, so this is a 3v3 question. Mitchell, Ingram, and Shepard, or Green, Alvarado, and Murray. And then he says, thanks for all of the content. All right,
let's see. You are welcome.
I don't like Keegan Murray today.
I don't either.
I like Jalen Green.
I do too.
Jose Alvarado's fine. I'm about even with the field on him. He's in a third of my lineups. Other side, he's asking us about Donovan Mitchell, Brandon Ingram, and Reed Shepherd. But this is tough. You got players on both. I don't love Keegan Murray. I don't love Reed Shepherd relative to his ownership. I guess I'll go with the first one, Mitchell, Ingram, and Shepherd. But they're kind of comparable to me. I just have very little Keegan Murray.
Finish this out. Yeah, I don't really find there to be a point to get away from the first one just because of Murray being kind of the weak link to the entire thing. I mean, I have no problem with as much Ingram as you want to get to in the spot without Zion, without everybody out there. Trey Murphy does come back, and they said 20 to 30 minutes. That is a pretty stark difference,
Yeah.
20 and 30 minutes. That is pretty tilting to me because, if it were 30 minutes, I probably don't want a ton of Brandon Ingram there. We have him a little bit over-owned as a result for it. I'll go with the first one ever so slightly, but know that, the Keegan Murray piece is kind of what's keeping me away.
And then over at 14 wants to know, would Jalen Wilson be a good alternative to Reed Shepherd? Well, here's the issue. There's a big price gap between them. Reed Shepherd is $3,100. Jalen Wilson is $800? Yeah, $3,800. I mean, it's a $700 salary difference. If you got the salary to play Jalen Wilson, then go for it. But I'm not dying to play Jalen Wilson unless we find out that he's starting today.
Yeah, what's really hard is Nick Claxton can now play 32 minutes a night. I think that's probably the slept on thing here. Like, Nick Claxton played 32 minutes against Cleveland. If that's going to continue here, it's so hard to imagine a world where we get a lot of excess run, considering they'll play Noah Clowney. I think he's the most likely guy to start in the absence of Dorian Finney-Smith here today. I mean, obviously, if Wilson ends up starting, just jam him in at 3,800 because there's actually some security to the minutes. But I'm assuming right now that it's going to be Noah Clowney. He's not as good of a fantasy producer. Jalen Wilson can get stuff done on the floor. Just be watching that starting lineup. If it ends up being Wilson, I would say, yeah, we're all going to get to Wilson a lot more than Reed Shepherd. But as it stands right now, I have more Reed Shepherd. Wilson is definitely a contrarian piece that you got to just know what you're getting with him. It's not quite Ty Jerome because, Ty Jerome doesn't have 28-minute, 30-minute upside. Jalen Wilson actually does with Dorian Finney-Smith out. So I'm more inclined to take shots on him, but he will not be in like 20, 25% of my lineups unless he somehow starts.
Yeah, so I'll say of the players who are live to start for the Nets, I think Jalen Wilson's the third most likely. I think Clowney's 1, Simmons is 2, and Wilson's 3.
Yep, and that's the same order I would have too, but I'm just throwing out the caveat because you never know.
Yeah, so we're still waiting on that starting lineup. Should be out relatively soon. We'll see, though. Let's get into Discord because we got some more questions here. So we'll finish up these questions, Eric, and then we'll do the nuke of the night. I was hoping that we would get that net starting lineup to come out before then, but we can't control when teams put out their starting lineup, so might have to do it before then. But JEW wants to know, who are our favorite pivots for a DK single entry? Favorite pivots?
Pivots off of like chalky pieces, because like Amin Thompson's not going anywhere. There will not be pivots off of Amin Thompson in this house.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking for a pivot, Dillon Brooks or I think that if you want to go to a Houston Rockets player who isn't Tari Eason, then I think you could look at Jalen Green or Dillon Brooks instead. If you're just looking for like a 1v1 swap based on price point, it's going to be easier to get to Dillon Brooks because he's $600 less expensive. Jalen Green, I guess, less of a pivot just because he's at such a different price range. But I think you make a case for the Dillon Brooks pivot over Tari Eason. There's a very realistic possibility that Dillon Brooks played, probably even not all that insane, that Dillon Brooks would play somewhat okay today, and then he just plays a lot more minutes than Eason.
Yep, agreed. Malachi Branham out. That's kind of interesting. Devin Vassell is the main guy now off the bench. That's kind of a bummer, but I mean, this at least makes way for a little bit more usage for him, Keldon Johnson, and the likening. Blake Wesley, probably a min guy.
Branham. Yeah, he was listed as questionable. We had him projected for like 10 minutes or something like that. Not going to like move the needle massively, but he is out, just for your guys' information.
I'll take a shot on Blake Wesley, 3,200, a pivot off of Reed Shepherd. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
If we're talking pivots, there you go. Found one. 3,200 Blake Wesley. I'll have a couple of shots in 150 on him.
And then JEW says, favorite players to be over and underweight to in 150 max. Yes. So this is going to revolve heavily around the Rockets for me. Favorite players to be overweight to, it is Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. And my favorite player to be underweight to, it is Reed Shepherd.
My favorite player to be underweight to here at the moment in tournaments is going to be running it back, Jose Alvarado. That went well last time. Can't wait to go under the field here again at 6,200. He's a good play. You should play him in cash for what it's worth. I'm just saying for tournaments, I'm going to be underweight. Favorite player to be over on is the nuke of the night.
Okay. One other player that I also like being overweight to is Ben Simmons. Now, if he ends up starting, this totally goes out the window because then people are going to be there anyway. But Ben Simmons at $4,800, he's still a good points per minute fantasy booster at this point in his career. And I mean, we've seen games this year where he fills up the stats with the rebounds, with the assists. He's always capable of some of the defensive stats. The guy's a shell of his former self. Like, it's only what was it, 4 years ago? He was an all NBA player. It's crazy how quickly times change. But Ben Simmons at $4,800, the Nets are shorthanded. And there's a very decent chance that could mean some more minutes for Ben Simmons. And he's the ability to fill up a stat sheet. So Simmons only projected for around 10% ownership. He's another contrarian guy who I like taking shots on for GPPs. Next question is from Rabashua. He's asking, who is a guy that the Sims are giving us a lot of that you're looking at and feel uncomfortable with and maybe don't want to have that much of that player?
Interesting question. Kevin Huerter would probably be one. I understand that there's no Malik Monk. I understand that it's a back-to-back. I think that that's kind of what it is, where Kevin Huerter is, I'm not getting that much of him, but it's somebody that, got up to 35 minutes against Phoenix yesterday, hadn't played more than 30 minutes in a game in like his previous 4, and now he's heading into San Antonio here on the road. There's no reason it can't turn over and be more Keon Ellis in a closing spot. There's a lot of times over the last year plus that Kevin Huerter isn't like locked into any kind of closing lineup as is. So it's, Doug McDermott who can end up playing closing type lineups for them if they want to go to that type of a court spacer, even though his usage hasn't even been there so far this season. I'd say Kevin Huerter, but again, that's just a play that I'd be uncomfortable whether I got it in the stims or not. It's just a guy who's at 20% that I could see 35 or 20 minutes. Those are the guys who make me feel comfortable on just about any slate.
Listen, I'm a data slut. Whatever the data gives me when I run everything through, that's what I'm going to end up playing.
I was trying to understand where he was coming from, though, and try to give some kind of an answer. But again, it's not going to be Sims dependent on me being comfortable or uncomfortable with him. It's more of a range of outcomes thing.
There's going to be players I play who I'm uncomfortable with. There's going to be players I'm underweight to that I'm uncomfortable with. When I'm making my alterations, it's almost always going to be because I'm anticipating some kind of late news based on injuries where we're just hoping that the chips fall our way. We think there's more upside by backloading lineup. So I'm not going to be making any ROI boosts for today. I'm just going to be playing what it is that I end up getting to. Of the players I'm overweight to, the one that makes me uncomfortable, though, is Lou Dort. And you can understand why he shows up in lineups. There's no Chet Holmgren. He's in line for potentially extra usage. He's in line to play more minutes. But at the same time, too, he's Lou Dort, and he could go out there and put up a Tony Snell line because he's a low usage guy who isn't always involved in the offense. So I'm not positive that the absence of Chet Holmgren means that Lou Dort has to get more usage. It could just be other guys who end up taking more shots instead. So I'm overweight to Lou Dort. I have him in a third of my lineups. I'm not going to be changing anything about it. But he's a guy that I just am kind of uncomfortable I have this much exposure to.
Yep, that completely makes sense.
Let's see what we have next. Mr. Cool Cam wants to know who are our favorite plays at each position for GPPs on FanDuel. All right, I'll go back to my FanDuel lineups. And do you have FanDuel lineups in front of you, Eric?
Sure do.
All right, so let's go back and forth. Starting at the point guard spot, easiest thing ever. It's going to be Amen Thompson, point guard and shooting guard. So let's just go. All right, Thompson's the guy, point guard and shooting guard. Then we'll give our second favorite options as well, because you said that Thompson's in 100% of your lineups. He's in 95% of mine on FanDuel. He's the guy, point guard and shooting guard. Behind Amen Thompson, De'Aaron Fox for me at point guard. Reasonable price point and no Malik Monk.
Donovan Mitchell.
Shooting guard. Behind Amen Thompson, Next man up for me, Jalen Green.
Donovan Mitchell.
All right. Then at small forward, that is Tari Eason.
Tari Eason.
At power forward, that would also be Tari Eason, but already used him. So I'll go Kevin Herter at small forward and Tari Eason at power forward.
Jalen Williams for me.
All right. Yeah. I mean, Kevin Herter, $4,400 on FanDuel. He's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility, pretty easy to fit into lineups. And then at center, that's Şengün.
And center for me is the nuke of the night.
Ooh. All right. All right. So you really are keeping that close to the vest. So I think we just have to. I think we just have to do it, because if not, I'm going to ask Eric a question. Be like, can't tell you. It's the nuke of the night. It's Jordan, play the animation. We got to extract some information out of Eric here.
That's how we do it in the biz, baby.
Oh, yeah. Here it comes. Here it comes. It is nuke of the night time. So, Eric, you know how it works. The audience knows how it works. In this segment, we give out one of our favorite GPP plays of the day, and it could be whatever the hell we want it to be. It could be a really low-owned play. It could be a mediocre owned play. It could be somebody who's really popular, but we're just locking in anyway to get them into all of our lineups. So this could go a number of different ways. But Eric, who is your nuke of the night?
Yeah, this is actually more FanDuel specific, because you have Alperen Şengün at 7,900. We have
it's
him
gonna be my guy. I know what you're about to say.
60% of the time. My guy is the one, the only Ivica Zubac. This guy, I absolutely love Ivica Zubac for tournaments today. I repeat, there is no Chet Holmgren out there. This is an OKC team that already just throws out the window rebounding. They decide every single season, it would seem, that they just have no interest in doing it. And that's come to fruition yet again this year. 27th in offensive rebound rate. That is just absurd right now. 20.3% there. And then giving up. They're just giving it up here on the other side of it too. And now you're missing your main big Chet Holmgren. They still are without Mr. Isaiah Hartenstein. They're going to have to play Jang and Kenrich Williams for a majority of their 5 minutes tonight. I could also see a world where Dylan Jones ends up out there in the starting unit. We haven't really talked about OKC. I'm going to take shots on something there in that front court as well at cheap, but we're talking about Ivica Zubac here, who is playing 38, 40 minutes in competitive spots here, and they're not on a back-to-back here. They did not play on Sunday. They are going into OKC. And then I looked ahead to the schedule for tomorrow. They're good to go. So, I mean, this is just like a perfectly landed spot here to be overweight to certain Los Angeles Clippers. We're seeing a lot of interest in the OKC side with SGA, with Lou Dort, with a number of these other pieces. I would urge you to take some shots on LAC, specifically the guy who should be down low and being able to do whatever he wants in 38, 40 minutes in competitive spots. I love him for tournaments at like sub 5% on FanDuel for 100 less than Şengün. Don't get me wrong. I love Şengün. DK, you can play two centers, so that makes it fun. But my nuke of the night, Ivica Zubac in a smash spot against a team that, well, is not equipped to deal with him anymore.
Pierre left us a super chat, and he was asking us, is Zubac a good pivot off of Şengün for FanDuel? And then look at you coming in and indirectly answering the question right away with your nuke of the night. So I have another center that I like, which is why I thought you were going to end up giving out my guy here, Eric. But we have all this value on this slate. And it's kind of surprising to me that none of the expensive guys are getting that much ownership today, considering all this value on the Houston Rockets. So one thing that I was looking at is who is the player who we could pay up for that I think is the most upside for the least amount of ownership?
Wemby!
Nope.
Oh, you're going Sabonis. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Other side of the game. Same game. Other side though. Sabonis. A guy also who I think that he should be benefiting a little bit, not massively, but a little bit in the absence of Malik Monk, because here is a guy in Malik Monk who's coming off the bench for the Sacramento Kings. He's occasionally closing games for them. And when he is on the court, he's the second highest usage player for them behind De'Aaron Fox. And now you're going to be taking him off the court. You're also losing a playmaker. Sabonis is already the primary distributor in the offense. Now he's going to have to do that even more in addition to some extra usage when Malik Monk is off the court. So, I mean, Sabonis here, ownership in just the mid-teens, $9,500, which is not all that difficult to pay up for. By the way, I'm also overweight to Wemby, but I do have more exposure to Sabonis than I do to Victor Wembanyama today. So I like Sabonis. I've got Sabonis in 30% of my lineups, about double the field. I think that's a really easy way to get off of Şengün, differentiate some lineups, and kind of same idea as you. I like Şengün. I'm right even with the field with him. He's so popular. So, I mean, having him in half my lineups, you're right there with the field. But yeah, there are expensive options who I like as pivots. Sabonis is one, Wemby's another, but Sabonis is the one I get the most of here, Eric.
Yeah, I think center's kind of loaded to some extent. Like I think Nick Claxton on DK, he's pulling quite a bit of ownership, but kind of rightfully. I mean, he got up to 32 minutes, just knowing that that kind of upside's there. And now you're getting a Pelicans team that's kind of decimated, starting a rookie in Yves Messi there at the center position. Jeremiah Robinson Earl can play some minutes there at the 5 as well. Daniel Tice backing him up there. It's just kind of they've been playing Trey Jameson now as well. It's just such an easy spot to see maybe Nicholas Claxton at 5,700 as well, but he's pulling the ownership. I'm with you. I think Sabonis is awesome, 9,500 DK. I'm more inclined to play him on DK where I can play two centers and maybe play him alongside some Zubats, playing him alongside, obviously, Alperen Şengün, who looks awesome. Jared Allen is sub 7K in a spot where they're on the road and maybe play a competitive game. I mean, you really, really want to be smashing center today.
Got another super chat here. This one is from Purple Plus. He says, thank you guys. Took second in the mini GPP, closer to first. Next tip. Hey, congrats. Second place. Nothing wrong with that. You come in second place a few times a year. And, you know, that's what, 3 seconds. It's probably about as good as a first there. So shout out to Purple Plus there. Good stuff there. Coming in second place. Congrats.
That's awesome.
Looking at, by the way, also, if you guys are coming in first, second, third in the GPP, number one, make sure you're playing with the Stokastic Avatar, DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, Owner's Box, wherever it is you're playing your DFS, because if you do finish at the top of a GPP and you have our Stokastic Avatar, you can win some free shit. You get a ring, you get free subscriptions to the site. So there is no downside to you playing with our avatar, but there is some upside, free stuff, swag. So go ahead, download the Stokastic Avatar from the Stokastic HOF page, make it your avatar on DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever it is that you're playing. And then if you have a win, tweet it at us. Let us know you won. Number one, we like to see it. It's cool. We like when you guys win. We want to celebrate with you, but also want to make sure that you guys could collect on some of your free packages if you do go ahead and come in the top of a GPP. So download that avatar. Go check it out. Link is down below in the YouTube description box if you guys need the page to go and get to. We've got the Slee Show says, what's their best GPP on DK?
What's their best? Also would be there. We need to learn the differences of those, but that's okay for $1.99. You're doing great. What's their best GPP? I mean, I like the opportunity to win the most money. Obviously, rake is still a thing in the world, but best GPP, the $15. I think it's filled at this point. I think the 4-point play on a daily basis, pretty good for the people out there. Minimax is great for the people. Yeah, otherwise, I think that's the question you asked. If you were asking favorite plays on DK, we can get into that at some point too. That's kind of what our whole show is. So yeah, let us know if there's any other questions based on that.
All right, so Slee Show. By the way, if we have not answered your question correctly, because I'm about to give a response as well in the same vein as Eric, what I think your question is, but if we didn't answer it correctly, you don't have to leave another super chat. Just throw in the YouTube chat what it is that you meant for us to answer. But I'm going to say it kind of depends on what kind of bankroll you are playing with. I always recommend this. Play in the GPPs with the lowest dollar buying amount possible to start. The 10 cent. There's those 10-cent GPPs that pop up all the time in the lobby. Go play, 20 lineups on DraftKings, diversify a little bit, and enter them into a bunch of those 10-cent contests. That's where you're going to be playing the softest competition. As far as like the big contests, also, if you're a lower dollar player, I really like the Minimax for some startup players. A really good place to grind your teeth and learn how to play DFS, learn how to play multiple lineups. And then overall, probably I think like the best GPP on FanDuel, it's the $4 20 max GPP. I think that's appealing to a lot of people. But yeah, it's a matter of opinion. Like I can't tell you what your favorite should be, but those are the places that I think you're going to find yourself most easily able to profit. Stokes wants to know thoughts on the pay up options today. Wemby, SGA, Harden, Zubats. All right, so let's talk about everybody who's 7K or more expensive, Eric, because that's going to include guys like, or actually, let's go 7,500 and above. So that'll make the cutoff a little bit higher. 7,500 and above. Who are the 3 pay up options you get the most exposure to on DK? 7,500 and above.
7,500 and above. I have the most of Alperen Şengün 1, number 2, SGA, and number 3, Donovan Mitchell on DK.
Şengün, Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox for me. Those are the 3 pay-up options that I'm liking the most overall. And let's see, was there any other, no other super chats for now, and some other questions from Discord. We've got Einsteinium wants to know, what's the difference between Caruso and Dort tonight? Is Dort really deserving of the 6x ownership gap? Here's the difference. Caruso, it appears OKC is saving him for the playoffs because they are playing him like clearly as a part of the rotation, but the minutes have just not been there for him in a significant way. And I think of him as maybe, if not the best perimeter defender in the NBA, he's clearly one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. But OKC is being very conservative with his minutes. The most he's played all year is 22 minutes. It's hard to expect that much more playing time from him out of that. And you know you're going to be getting a solid amount of minutes out of Lou Dort, barring like injury or foul trouble or anything like that. So I do think the ownership gap is warranted.
Not only that, but I mean, they just haven't played a lot of competitive games. I mean, they have the Golden State one. It got wonky towards the end. They lost by 11. Houston, they won by 19. Denver was the most competitive game they played all year. They lost by 2 in that one. He played 22 minutes, was 1 for 9 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. Didn't play very well. He did add 9. Yes. Oh, no. 6 stocks to go with that. They won by 16 against Orlando. They won by 13 against the Clippers, 23 against Portland. If they play competitive games, we'll see Caruso play 24 minutes, 22, 24 minutes. I think this is a decent enough spot to deploy him and maybe take a shot or 2 on him. But yeah, there's no way he's going to be a priority. Definitely something to be paying attention to. Jalen Smith ruled out. All right. That doesn't change a ton. Probably just put Sanogo as the backup center. Julian Phillips maybe for a couple more minutes. But yeah, nothing really to carve out of that. But 4,200, it's not super appealing from a real life perspective, though. Caruso will play more when they play competitive spots.
Yeah, well, here's what it does. It is the second bet that I've placed today. They got voided. I also won this morning on Fred VanVleet under assists. I had Jalen Smith under 5.5 rebounds. Goes by the wayside now. That's the biggest impact to me. That's it, though. I agree with you. It's probably just Sanogo as a 1-for-1 substitution. There's not like some fallout where somebody gets massively more playing time or usage out of this.
I will say at a flat 3K with massive blowout potential, considering it's Cleveland and that's all they do is just knock people into the other hemisphere. 1 of 150. If you're just building out a couple, if you want to get to a couple lineups, Sanogo and just say he gets all the minutes there, maybe. But yeah, it's not going to be fun. Julian Phillips probably couple of minutes as well. Yeah, I'm not going to do probably anything with it, to be honest, but just, yeah, Jalen Smith's a much better fantasy point per minute guy. And, he's always intriguing sub 4K, but yeah, probably doesn't do a lot.
Got a super chat from Hill. He wants to know, is Zubats and Wemby possible in the same lineup? And then thoughts on Boston Jr. after he was, I think that was the last game they played where he was, at least it was a recent game they played where Boston was a super chalk, ended up having a massive ceiling game. I think that was the last game where he was the chalk. But is Zubats and Wemby possible in the same lineup?
Yeah, it is, so but I don't love it.
It's possible. The only issue you're going to run into there, and why I doubt I have very many lineups with the two of them together, is because they're both center only.
Yep, perfect. On FanDuel, you can play Sabonis and Wemby at power forward, so that makes it a little bit different. What a time to be alive. Sabonis power forward eligible on FanDuel, but is what it is. I didn't make the slate, they did, and they have power forward eligibility, so going to be a little bit easier over there. I think the main issue you're running into is like you need that 60 plus from Wemby to probably end up really having it matter at 10-5 because you have Sabonis for 1,000 left. You have Vooch, with no backup center really. We don't even necessarily know if it just automatically ends up being Sanogo there. Şengün at 7,900, Mobley 7,600 power forward center. Jared Allen I like at sub 7K. There's just so many centers to be rotating through. Nick Claxton 5,700. You really are kind of you're asking Wemby for the 60 piece.
By the way, funny observation by Arkathelza in chat. He said, I don't know why people play that bum. He gets ruled out after lock all the time. It's different. He's not on the Pacers anymore. Do you remember last year, Jalen Smith? Yes. I think there were 3 slates where he was actual chalk. It was all like 2 or 3 game slates where he got ruled out after lock when he wasn't on the injury report. Do you remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And I would always say just always have like 5% Isaiah Jackson just hanging out just in case. Well, sadly, Jalen Smith gone and Isaiah Jackson theoretically gone too because he's out for the season. It's sad.
By the way, also, just want to make this clear to people because it seems like there might be some confusion in chat. The players that we've talked about, Jalen Smith is not Jabari Smith and he's not Jalen Green, backup center for the Bulls. So just in case people are thinking this was somebody else out for the Rockets, that's not the case. We do, however, have Steven Adams, who's questionable to play for the Rockets. Honestly, he doesn't seem like he should be a massive player. But if Steven Adams is out, that would make me like Tari Eason slightly more. I already like Tari Eason to some extent, but I think that would solidify his minutes a little bit if Adams is out.
It would also make me like Jabari Smith a lot more because I think he becomes your backup 5. They have no Landale out there and Steven Adams questionable. I'm currently not getting to a ton of Jabari Smith. I forgot to mention this earlier because it's something that I've been thinking about all day. I love Jabari Smith for tournaments in the event that you get Steven Adams ruled out.
We got a question in Discord from Master PJ. He's saying, Sims are getting him over the field on Simmons and under the field on Alvarado. Same boat for me. I'm about even with the field on Alvarado. I don't have some like crazy underweight stance or anything like that. But he wants to know what is my take on Ben Simmons. Wants to know if I covered him. Yeah, we did talk about Ben Simmons a little bit before. The Nets are shorthanded with no Dorian Finney-Smith. Ben Simmons is still a good fantasy producer. There's a wide range of outcomes with him. He's very cheap. I don't want to have like my entire portfolio built around Ben Simmons today, but I think he's a good GPP target. I'm overweight to him. I'm in line with the Sims here.
Completely with you.
This is a good question as well. It's one that hasn't come up once the entire year because we haven't had a slate like this yet, Eric, where there's been a massive amount of players who show up as chalk from one team, but there's all the Houston value. They're shorthanded with Fred VanVleet out. He wants to know is, where was he? Marcus Palomo. What is the most amount of players you'd be willing to have from one team in your lineup? So this is for today. This has to be code for the Rockets because there's no other team I'd be getting like 4 or 5 players from or anything like that. But what is the most amount of Rockets you'd be willing to have in one individual lineup?
Probably don't want 5. 4. 4 is showing up for me. Amin Thompson, Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason. They're all at price points that don't really make sense for Şengün, the minutes and fantasy point per minute rate. Amin Thompson, every single rate you look at, and Tari Eason, just the opportunity that's there. You could add Jalen Green to that. You could add Brooks to that. Like 4, probably the most I want.
All right. We got a follow-up from the Sleaze show, and here we go. He meant who are the best cheap players. He thought GPP meant cheap players. So that's where we were. Well, I mean, we're confused for a number of reasons. Number one, there was a grammar error in it. So that was confusing. But then on top of it, so GPP, just for you guys really quick, GPP means guaranteed prize pool. So like those big contests you see on DraftKings and FanDuel, where even if they don't fill, they still run. Those are called GPPs because the prize pool is guaranteed no matter how many people enter the contest. So that's what that means, just for you guys' information. But he wants to know who are the best overall cheap players on the slate. All right. So of the guys that I'm considering value options, here are the sub 5K guys I get the most of on DK. Amin Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason, Lou Dort, Kevin Huerter. Those 5 for me.
Yeah, Amin Thompson, Kevin Huerter, but again, the Kevin Huerter one makes me uncomfortable. Lou Dort does not. I'm playing a lot of him. Keon Ellis, I have a little bit of at 4K. We didn't talk about him. Cason Wallace for OKC, I think is a lot more intriguing now, considering how thin they are. If they do try to go small against Zubats, I'll probably be in trouble. So I'm not going crazy with some of these pieces. And Isaiah Joe at 3,600. He's a guy that maybe they do just try to put all the shooting out there and try to rip Zubats off the floor, put him in pick and roll with SG and move on with your life. It's just who do you end up having the pick and roll partner as? It doesn't look very good every time I play that out in my head for OKC. And it just has me getting away from that kind of an idea. But I think they're worth a couple of sprinklings. And then I threw this one in. He is the deepest of deep shots, but I actually ROI boosted him to get to a little bit. Blake Wesley from San Antonio. He's already in the rotation, is already playing a decent amount. He is 3,200, played 19 and 21 minutes in competitive spots against Portland, Utah, their last 2. Without Malachi Branham out there, I think that at least shores up that potential in the second unit.
Got an interesting question here. This one is a super chat from our guy, Sean Jeezy. Sean wants to know, hey, friends, who's your favorite sub 5% owned player on DraftKings? So we're doing we're dumped diving like raccoons on this one. Lots of value on the slate, Eric. It's also a smaller slate, so there's kind of limited options. Less than 5% owned. You have to roster somebody who is sub 5% owned right here. Which direction would you go for Sean's question? I think I know what your answer is going to be.
Sub 5% on DK.
Can I tell you what your answer is going to be?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your answer is going to be Jalen Wilson.
Yeah, it probably is. I'm going through. It's Jalen Wilson or it's Blake Wesley. I mean, I don't have like more than 10% of these guys right now, but yeah, they're two guys that are showing up. I'm just going through 5% guys. I have a little bit of Jeremiah Robinson, around 2% of him. Yeah, I would say Jalen Wilson and Blake Wesley.
Yeah, I'm going to say Jalen Wilson or Keon Ellis. Jalen Wilson, you talked about him at the top, or we got a question about him. And for Jalen Wilson, I mean, there's no Dorian Finney-Smith. There's so many different, the Nets run a deep rotation. There's a number of different ways they could go. Ultimately, though, the Nets are going to play the most minutes to whoever plays the best. We saw earlier in the year, there was the slate where I played a bunch of Noah Clowney, and he looked like a good value option. And what happens? Zaire Williams plays really well off the bench, and he just plays the majority of the minutes. You can see that happen with Jalen Wilson, whether he starts or comes off the bench today. If he comes off the bench, he makes his shots. Jalen Wilson's playing 25 to 30 minutes in that scenario. So I'll go with Jalen Wilson as one, and the other one, Keon Ellis. There was like a good amount of hype around Keon Ellis in the offseason. He played okay last year. He was good down the stretch. He improved over the course of the season. There was this idea that he was going to be a bigger part of the Kings rotation, play a more prominent role. And then he's just like not in the rotation to open up the season. He's not involved. But now Malik Monk is out. Does it mean that Keon Ellis is going to play a big role? No. That's why he's sub 5% owned, but there's potential for an extended role there. So that is why he is going to be one of the other guys that I like for less than 5% ownership. And that is just about going to do it for us today here, guys. We have to hand it over to the NFL Live Before Lock guys. If you guys still have questions, if you're still wanting to get some information, I'm going to be hanging out in Discord for the next 30 minutes while I build my lineups. So if you guys want to get access to myself, come hop into Discord. One of the perks being a Stokastic sub. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check out NFL Live Before Lock. Have a good night.